In war, the first casualty is truth. But in Gaza, truth isn't just a casualty, it's been blockaded. Since October 2023, Gaza has become one of the least accessible war zones on Earth. No independent reporters, no unfiltered images, no boots on the ground investigations from foreign press. And this isn't just about danger, this is about control over narrative, perception, and public opinion. Meanwhile, in places like Ukraine, journalists film alongside soldiers, walk through shelled-out towns, and even interview civilians under fire. So why is Gaza so different? This is the story of a war zone we're barely allowed to see, and why that should concern all of us. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched a deadly surprise attack on southern Israel, killing over 1,100 people and taking hundreds hostage. Israel responded with full-scale war, a massive bombing campaign followed by a ground invasion of Gaza, and within hours, Israel sealed off all foreign access to Gaza. One must say that this conflict has been going on for centuries and isn't able to be pinpointed down to this little single interaction, but Israel has used it as grounds for escalation. They sealed off the Erez crossing in the north, controlled by Israel, and the Rafah crossing in the south, controlled by Egypt, which was only open for humanitarian passage, and even that was a rare occurrence. No visas, no embedded journalists inside Gaza, no press freedom. Israel cited military necessity. It claimed Hamas was embedded among civilians, making reporting unsafe and strategically problematic. But the result was a blackout. No international witnesses inside one of the most densely populated conflict zones on Earth. Throughout the rest of 2023, the only foreign press near Gaza were those embedded with Israeli forces. That means they traveled under Israeli military escort with their footage and interviews pre-approved before release. This embedded model has precedent. The US used it in Iraq and Afghanistan, but it also means the army has veto power over what the world sees. Inside Gaza, it is a different story. We have local Palestinian journalists who became the world's only eyes on the ground. Photojournalists like Mutaz Asaiza risked their lives documenting the destruction before evacuating in January of 2024, and others weren't so lucky. By mid-2024, over 100 journalists had been killed, most of them Palestinians, making this the deadliest conflict for media in modern history. They had no flak jackets, no backup teams, no international protection, just a phone, a camera, and the whole world watching, or sometimes not even that. By early 2024, the world's top news organizations had had enough. More than 50 major outlets, including BBC, CNN, AP, Reuters, Sky News, they all signed open letters demanding unrestricted press access to Gaza. They weren't just asking to see the war, they were asking to document war crimes, understand humanitarian conditions, and show the civilian cost. But the Israeli government pushed back. Officials argued that the situation was too dangerous. Hamas would use journalists as human shields, foreign press couldn't be protected or trusted. Meanwhile, Egypt kept Rafah close to foreign press, likely under diplomatic pressure, effectively creating a two-sided blockade. In March 2024, the blockade loosened, just a little. A few reporters, including CNN's Clarissa Ward, were allowed into southern Gaza as part of humanitarian missions, but even these visits were pre-approved, limited in time and movement, and heavily monitored by the IDF. They couldn't go to northern Gaza, the epicenter of Israeli operations, and what they saw confirmed what many feared: destroyed hospitals, mass displacement, and a deepening humanitarian catastrophe. But these trips weren't consistent. They were rare exceptions, not a change in the IDF's policy. Even today, there is no regular independent press access to Gaza for international journalists. Compare this situation to Ukraine, where over 3,000 accredited foreign journalists have covered the war since 2022. Journalists there can travel freely in most regions. Embedding with the Ukrainian army is optional, and there's no censorship of footage, so you don't necessarily have to go with them. And reporters have access to cities, hospitals, refugee centers, and mass graves. Yes, it is dangerous for these reporters. Over 20 journalists have died, but that's a fraction of the people that have died, or journalists that have died, in Gaza. And Ukraine sees the press as allies and documentation and not enemies, because they see themselves as the victims and try to act righteously. In Gaza, access is either denied or filtered through military control, and that difference isn't just procedural, it shapes how the world understands these wars. Throughout history, journalism has played a crucial role in documenting truths that governments try to hide. They have been important for the international community and how they look at these conflicts. Back in the Vietnam War, it was footage that turned the tide of public opinion, burned children, people with one arm, one leg. The horrifying nature of that war turned the Europeans' opinion towards that war. Syria, videos exposing the chemical attacks of the Assad regime, they changed the whole perception of what was going on. Ukraine, images of Bucha forced the world leaders to act. They said, all right, we need to do something here. This is an unjust thing that's happening. But in Gaza, the picture you get is incomplete. Without the international press right there, we rely on local voices, often dismissed or discredited. There's no third-party verification of civilian deaths, aid blockades, or war crimes, and global audiences are left with silence or a spin, depending on the source that they're getting. This isn't just about journalism, it's about accountability. Without cameras, who will believe what has happened? Gaza remains a black box, a war the world can't see unless we fight to open it. In war, truth doesn't just get distorted, it gets buried, and in Gaza it's buried beneath rubble, censorship, and fear. And that is then used to spread false narratives. If journalism matters, not just for storytelling, but for justice, then journalists must be allowed to see the battlefield with their own eyes, and not just depend on hearsay. Support independent journalism. Demand access and do not settle for silence. Use your voice to spread awareness about this topic. You can also use your voice to subscribe to our channel and help me spread the good word of how important journalism is and how important values are, which I'm saddened that I have to say that, but yes. What do you think? Should war zones be required to allow international press? Drop a comment below. I hope you have a great day in these troubling times.